Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I want to thank you all for joining us today. We're very excited. As most of you probably know, Cscape 10 has been in the works for a very long time. And Canvas, that particular product line, has been kind of attached at the hip with Cscape 10 for quite a long time as well. So we're going to be launching both of those simultaneously. So joining me for today's webinar on the Horner side of things, we have our product manager, Casey Gardner, who will be answering your questions in real time. We've also got our marketing team, our crack marketing staff. Marcy and Emily are joining us as well, kind of keeping things on the rails, if you will. All right, so let's go ahead and dive right in and take a look at our agenda for today's webinar. So we'll be answering the question, of course, what are Cscape 10 and Canvas? What are those products? We're going to be talking about where Canvas fits among the various product lines that Horner Automation offers. So is it at the low end, at the middle end? Is it at the high end? Where does it fit when it's compared with other Horner OCS product lines? We're going to go through the individual models in the Canvas lineup because, again, Canvas is a physical hardware product line. And then we'll go through the support materials that are available or will be available at launch. And again, you've got a couple documents you can download from the handout section right now. Also, after we've kind of covered Canvas, then we're going to be switching to Cscape 10, the Cscape 10 software. We're going to start by talking about the new features in Cscape 10 that will apply regardless of which Horner OCS product you may be using. And then we'll finish up with the Cscape 10 features that are exclusive to Canvas. In other words, features that you can only take advantage of if you've got the Canvas controllers. Okay, so that's the schedule for today's session. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, we'll start with what is Cscape 10. So as most of you are probably familiar, Cscape is the programming environment that Horner has created for many years. It's a Horner design software package. It's traditionally been free and it remains free, but it's used to program every single Horner product out there. So that's one of the differentiators with Horner Automation. We've always felt very strongly we want one software program to program all of our products. So not one software package that's free for the low end and a paid software package that costs you money for the high end products. One software package for all of our products in general. And with Cscape 10, that remains true. You can use Cscape 10 with any modern Horner OCS, and you can take advantage of those features with any OCS, but also there are, as I mentioned in the last slide, there are some features that are exclusive to Canvas because they're just major new features that require some hardware changes. Okay, so that's what is Cscape 10. Now, what is Canvas? So Canvas is our newest family of all-in-one controllers. You know, we have multiple families at Horner and have for many years. And there are three primary differentiators with Canvas when you compare Canvas with our other Horner OCS product lines. First of all, Canvas has what we call an advanced graphics engine. So it has the most advanced graphics we've ever offered in a all-in-one controller. It also has the first dual-core microprocessor with a dedicated core for graphics and another dedicated core for logic. So what that means is regardless what you do with your graphics, no matter how fancy or advanced your graphics get in your application, your logic, because it has its own dedicated core, will remain consistent and fast. So you'll have good low scan rates with Canvas. Also, the third thing that is a differentiator with Canvas is that there is IIoT functionality built into Canvas or included with Canvas. Now, the features that I'm talking about here aren't necessarily brand new, but they are features that were not necessarily standard with our other products. Things like MQTT Spark Plug for pushing data to the cloud or pushing data to a product like Inductive Automation's Ignition. That is something that has been available, but it was an extra, if you will. It's standard with Canvas. Also, WebMI for remote monitoring and control. That's been available for a while, but we've got an enhanced version of WebMI that we call WebMI Plus that is standard with Canvas. So no extra cost there, no extra licensing required. So those are really the three differentiators with Canvas. Now, as we take a look at where Canvas fits in relation to the other Horner product lines, let's look at that now. So our entry-level product line is the Micro OCS, and that's a very popular product line. It's been out now for probably 2 or 3 years, and it's really growing in volume quickly. That's because it's an excellent product for simple machines where cost is really important. Okay, so micro OCS is our entry-level product. Really for the lion's share of applications out there, above the basics, above the simple machines, you're probably going to take a look at XL Prime. That's a product that kind of carries on the tradition of our XL family, yet it's got brand new internals that make it a viable product for many, many years to come. So that's our bread and butter product line, the XL Prime series. And then Canvas fits in above those two. So it's got those advanced graphics, it's got the built-in IoT, it's got the dual-core microprocessor. So today, Canvas is our highest end OCS product line. Now, as we go through the Canvas model lineup, let's take a look at that now. So there are 5 different screen configurations available in Canvas, all right? All Canvas models share the same characteristics. They share the advanced graphics we've been talking about, the dual-core microprocessor, the built-in IoT features. So those are all standard with all the Canvas models, of course. And Canvas models also have the type of OCS peripherals you'd expect to find. Things like a CAN port for I/O expansion, at least one Ethernet port for industrial Ethernet support and FTP and email type support. A couple of serial ports for interfacing with legacy type devices that are still prevalent in industrial applications. Micro SD for built-in data storage, as well as great maintenance capabilities. All Canvas units also have a USB-A port, so you can use that for a flash drive. You can also use that to easily add Wi-Fi to any Canvas model. Released only about a month ago, we have a terrific second generation Wi-Fi adapter that plugs in over USB, that adds Wi-Fi capability to any OCS that has a USB-A port, and all Canvas models have that. So that's a great way of adding wireless Ethernet to any model without subtracting any of the wired capability that's included with those models. And then they all feature USB programming ports as well. Now, in addition to the MQTT spark plug and the WebMI, which are IoT type features, another thing that you get with Canvas is you do have the ability to use any of our logic languages. Okay, so if you prefer the traditional register-based advanced ladder, that's still supported in Canvas. If you prefer variable-based advanced ladder because of its user-defined function block capability and other capabilities, that's supported in Canvas better than ever before. If you prefer IEC, that's available as well. And if you're an IEC user, enhanced IEC is available included as a standard feature. Now, what is the big deal about enhanced IEC for those IEC users out there? Enhanced IEC includes simulation, and it also includes some advanced type troubleshooting tools like breakpoints. So if you are an IEC user, Canvas is a terrific option, giving you the most feature-rich IEC that we've ever offered. In addition to the differentiators I've talked about before, all Canvas models also feature all brand new internal graphics. So Horner OCS models have supported system menus and system recovery screens for many years, but they've always been text-based, easy to navigate, very effective, but always text-based. With Canvas, all the internal graphics are now totally redesigned, and you see some screenshots there to kind of indicate that. Also, Canvas is the first Horner OCS product line that supports gestures. Now, they're simple gestures. The Canvas is still primarily a resistive touchscreen-based hardware platform. Why resistive touchscreen and not capacitive touchscreen? Well, primarily because resistive touchscreen is still the most reliable in industrial applications and still the best option if you've got a glove-based operator. Now, we are exploring cap touch options in the future for Horner product lines, but Canvas does remain a resistive touchscreen-based unit. However, it does support simple gestures such as swipes and scrolls and rotates, for instance. Okay, now let's take a look at individual models in the Canvas lineup. Now let's start with the 4-inch, the Canvas 4. Now, if you take a look at the Canvas 4, that first unit there on the left, you'll notice it really looks like an XL4, and that's on purpose. That's because the XL4, for those of you who are familiar with that model, has been one of our most popular models for many, many years. It's got a 4-inch screen in a 1/4 VGA form factor with some dedicated keys. Now, we kept the dedicated keys, but we definitely de-emphasized them from a graphic standpoint. We wanted the XL4 equivalent model in the Canvas series to make it easy for any XL4 users to navigate to Canvas if they chose to do so. So we decided to keep that screen configuration with those buttons. But again, it's one of the few models in the Canvas line that actually has those buttons. Now, all the models in Canvas, with the exception of one, feature XL series IO options. So when you order them from the factory, you'll select whether you want a Model 0 with no built-in IO, a Model 2 IO complement, which is 12 digital in, 6 relay out, and 4 analog in. There's the Model 3, which is 12 in, 12 out, solid state, and 2 analog in. And then you've got the Model 4, which adds more digital IO, the Model 5, which is combination of digital and analog, and then the Model 6, which is one of our more popular models because it has the most extensive analog options available. So with the Model 6 from any Canvas, you're going to get 12 in, 12 out digital, 6 analog in, and 4 analog out, where all the analog is universal. So pretty much any sensor type on the input side and any analog output style on the output side. So that's the IO that's available in every single Canvas model except the Canvas 5. The Canvas 5, which is the second model in the middle there on the screen, the Canvas 5 is based on a hardware platform that has 4 DC in, 4 DC out, and 4 analog in. So for those of you who are familiar with the X5, it's the same basic hardware platform from an IO standpoint, but of course with all the advancements in terms of the dual-core microprocessor and all the memory and those sorts of things. So again, the Canvas 5 is the only one that has that unique IO complement in the product family. The Canvas 7 is one of our 2 models in the family that have a 7-inch display. The 7-inch display these days is the most popular display size in industry, with 800 by 480 pixels, most typical and definitely included in Canvas. And the Canvas 7 model has all the features that you'd expect in Canvas in the basic IO complement and the basic other capabilities. Now, when we move to the next page here, you'll see the last 2 models in the family, and that is the Canvas 7D and the Canvas 10D. Now, what these 2 models have in common, in addition to larger displays, is also the fact that these units have dual Ethernet and dual CAN and also audio output capability. So those features are unique to the 7D and the 10D. Now, the 7D is very similar if you look at it. If you're familiar with our XL7, the 7D is in a similar form factor. Again, the XL7 has been incredibly popular for many years, and we wanted those users to have an easy transition platform if they prefer it. The 10D is unique from Horner in that it's the first widescreen high-resolution display in a 10-inch size that's available from Horner in a high-end product family like the Canvas. So that product we think is going to be very popular. Okay, so those are the 5 models that are available in Canvas. All right, now that we've kind of explored the Canvas hardware, let's talk for a minute about what materials are available for Canvas. Now, during this particular session, you can go to the handout tab and download our Canvas product selector accordion. You can also download a Cscape 10 marketing cut sheet as well. So those are available during the webinar, and then also will be available permanently starting Monday when everything goes live with Canvas and Cscape 10. And just to button that up, let's talk about Canvas availability. So on July 1st, which is Monday, all right, and there's a countdown timer on our website that gives you the exact time on Monday. But on July 1st, Canvas will be available. Now, all models in the Canvas line are build to order. So there are 30-some SKUs or 30-some different part numbers in the Canvas product family. And so we don't have them all sitting on the shelf all the time. But we're really good at turning purchase orders into deliveries. And 2 to 6 weeks generally leans way down towards the 2-week time period, then up toward the 6-week time period. So you can get Canvas very quickly with a short lead time. And if you happen to have participated in the beta program with us and you have a Canvas beta unit in your possession, we'd really love to get that swapped out to a production unit at no cost. So we would encourage you, if you haven't heard from your local distributor, get in touch with them or get in touch with our customer service folks, and let's get that swap out happening ASAP. All right, so that's the scoop on Canvas, available starting Monday. We would encourage you to get a hold of your distributor and get your order in and get a unit that you can start working with as soon as possible. Now let's turn our attention to Cscape 10. And as I talk about Cscape 10, I'm going to be kind of dividing the features up into 3 different categories, if you will. We're going to first talk about features related to the user interface of Cscape 10, or how Cscape 10 looks on your desktop as you're working with it as a system designer. Then we're going to talk about changes in Cscape 10 to the way you edit graphics for your projects, the screen graphics that go into the OCS units that you deploy on your machines and in your applications. How is the graphics editing process different regardless of what OCS you happen to use? And then finally, we're going to be talking about the specific new redesigned graphics objects that are exclusive to Canvas. In other words, they require the Canvas hardware and the Canvas firmware in order to be able to actually execute those new graphics objects. So we'll be talking about that third. Okay, so let's start with the user interface changes, how Cscape 10 looks a little different than Cscape 9 and earlier versions. And we'll start with the quick menu button. So the quick menu button is up in the upper left-hand corner. It's a button that you press with your mouse, and it effectively gives you the most commonly needed program management functions for your application. So, I need to create a new project. I need to open an existing project. Maybe I have a recent program I just want to click on and open that guy. Maybe I need to export to removable media, digital copy of my program for loading it remotely. Those are all accessible from the quick menu button. Also accessible from the quick menu button is the last option there on the bottom is the settings option. So with Cscape 9 and earlier versions, there were 2 or 3 different places you had to go to kind of set up Cscape the way you wanted it. With Cscape 10, there's that one settings choice. You click on that and you can set everything up that you need to in Cscape 10. How your ladder looks, what your download options look like, all those sorts of things are accessible from that single settings option. So that's the quick menu button in Cscape 10. The thing that looks the most different in Cscape 10 is the ribbon toolbar. So the ribbon toolbar effectively replaces the pull-down menus that were in Cscape 9 and earlier versions. So it takes all the commands that are typically done and that were typically previously accessed from pull-down menus. All those commands now are effectively categorized into 8 different tabs. Okay, so the tabs include things like the Home tab, the Edit tab, the Logic Editing tab, etc. So all the commands are divided into a different tab. Some commands are on multiple tabs because it just makes more sense to do that, to make them accessible from multiple locations. But in general, commands are located on a specific tab and within a group in a specific tab. So at the bottom of each tab, you'll see groups. Okay, in the case of the Home tab, which is what is displayed on the screen there, you've got a view group, a controller group, an online change group, etc. So again, the ribbon toolbar is one of the biggest differences in terms of the way Cscape 10 looks and the way maybe that you use it as you're kind of navigating from command to command. Now, another new feature with Cscape 10 is a quick access toolbar. So this is another way that you can quickly access commands. Now, each command has the potential of being represented by an icon, and we have a default set of icons with the quick access toolbar, and by default, that's located above the ribbon toolbar. One of the great things about the quick access toolbar is you can customize it however you want. If there are only 3 or 4 things that you use repeatedly that you want to have access to extremely quickly, you could customize your quick access toolbar to only include those 3 or 4 things and to have them in the order that you want them. Or if you want them to be much more extensive than the 15 or 20 commands that are in there by default, you can add more to it, no problem. And you can reorder them to what order you want. So the quick access toolbar is a great way to quickly access specific commands that you need and that you use frequently, and you can customize it precisely the way that you want to. Now let's start talking about graphics editing in Cscape. As you're creating your screens for your machine control applications, how is Cscape 10 different when it comes to graphics editing than Cscape 9? And I'm not talking about specific Canvas type issues now, I'm just talking about in general. Well, the biggest difference with Cscape 10 is that screens are now edited in tabs alongside other tabs that have logic in them. So with Cscape 9 and earlier versions, it could do screen editing as well as all your logic editing in that same program. However, while you were editing screens, The graphics editor in Cscape 9 and earlier versions just took over the entire desktop, and all you could do at that time was edit graphics until you close that window, and then you could go back to editing logic and other functions. With Cscape 10, all your graphic screens are edited in tabs, and so you can quickly switch back and forth from tab to tab and go from editing a screen to editing a logic routine, for instance. Another new feature for graphics editing in Cscape 10 is the graphic toolbar. Now, there's been a ladder logic toolbar or a logic toolbar forever in Cscape. Now there's also one for graphics. And as you transition between a logic tab and a graphic tab, that toolbar changes from a logic-oriented toolbar to a graphics-oriented toolbar. Same thing for the toolbox. Now, the toolbox is the feature that you've used for many years that categorizes all the different logic functions as you're editing logic in Cscape. Well, now when you're editing graphics in a graphic tab and a screen tab, now that toolbox is still there, but now it's got different categories of screen functions. All the different screen objects, all the different graphic objects that you will use as you're building your screens, you will basically have them all organized in the toolbox, which shows up every time you are on a graphics tab. So those are really the three primary differences, to start with at least, when it comes to graphics editing in Cscape 10. Okay, there are some other new features we'll talk about that you can take advantage of regardless of which Horner OCS you're using when it comes to editing screen graphics. We've always supported, if as an optional charge, so we can compensate the artist, we've always supported a symbol library version of Cscape, and that will continue in Cscape 10. But with Cscape 10, we also have included what we call Clipart, which is hundreds and hundreds of pre-drawn images, that a lot of which are kind of industry focused, you know, motors and pumps and tanks and all those sorts of things, conveyors, etc. So you can peruse that library as well to find the types of images that you may be looking for to build the screen graphics that best reflect the type of images that you want on your user interface for your machine. So you've got more options than ever when it comes to finding pre-drawn images that you can incorporate in your project. So the clip art is available as a standard feature with every version of Cscape 10. And that being said, we are still supporting the symbol library. So for those of you who have come to get used to the thousands of available images that can be, you know, recolored and rotated and all those sorts of things, using the symbol library tool in Cscape 10, that is still available. So if you decide to get the symbol version of Cscape 10, yeah, it's going to cost you $99, but you'll get all 3,000 of those symbols, and you'll also get the clip art capability as well. If you just decide to go for the free download version of Cscape 10, no problem. You'll have all that clip art available to you, just not the symbol library options. Some other new features or enhanced features when it comes to image editing and graphic editing and screen editing in Cscape 10, we have updated our image import window, so that now it's easier to find and to preview the images that you want to include, you know, the custom images, the JPEGs or the bitmaps or whatever that you want to include in your project. So that dialog has been improved significantly. There are some new options for flipping horizontal and vertical. And if you are using Canvas, there are further enhancements for supporting PNG file format, GIF file format, and doing some additional scaling type options as well. So importing images has definitely been impacted in Cscape 10. Okay, now we're going to switch over to talking about the type of Canvas exclusive graphic features that are included in Cscape 10. So from this point on, these are all features that, to take advantage of them, you'll need to use Canvas in order to do that. And I'm not going to go through this particular slide. This slide just kind of summarizes what I'm about to talk about here. Okay, let's dive right in. One of the first kind of nifty graphic features that's available with Canvas is that all objects not only have standard attributes, which graphics objects have had attributes for years with the OCS, and that continues today. So things like visibility and flashing and color and those sorts of things can be changed dynamically through the use of attributes. With Canvas and Cscape 10, you now also have enhanced attributes. So enhanced attributes can be modified at runtime, and those are things like the X position on the screen of an object, the Y position on the screen of an object, the rotation of an object, its opacity, not just visible or invisible, but 0 to 100% opacity. The height can be changed of an object. The width can be changed of an object. So all those can be changed at runtime. And you can either assign individual variables to those individual attributes if you choose. Like maybe you're only going to be changing the X position of an object and you don't care about all those other enhanced attributes. So you could basically add just a variable for that particular X position, if you wish. Or if you are going to be manipulating multiple of those attributes, you could use, if you're using basically a IEC or a variable-based advanced ladder, you could also be utilizing a structure-based variable so that you can quickly and easily access all those attributes with just assigning a single variable. So that's definitely a useful feature that applies to all objects in Canvas with Cscape 10. Now, all objects in Canvas and Cscape 10 also have the ability to have completely customized backgrounds. So traditionally, with object backgrounds and screen backgrounds in Cscape and traditional OCS units with standard graphics, you can change background colors. Okay, you can't necessarily put an image in the background or those sorts of things, but you can change background colors. With Canvas, you have the ability to select a custom image as your background or from a whole variety of patterns. And some of those patterns can have their colors changed and be otherwise modified. So a lot more choices for backgrounds with objects in Canvas. Some other enhancements in Canvas for Cscape 10. Your data objects. These are the objects that are used to display numeric data or ASCII data or maybe time and date information. You've got more options there in terms of not only the shape of those objects, but also optionally, you can change the way that the user edits those on the unit at runtime. You can decide, if you choose, to have the user utilize a tumbler control for modifying data if that makes the most sense for that particular data field. So that's a new option for Cscape 10. When it comes to indicators, the traditional pilot lights, you of course have more choices in terms of what those look like visually. Also, there is a user-defined indicator option now with Canvas and Cscape 10. So you can choose for a user-defined indicator what that image looks like when the indicator is on or the variable is on, and what it looks like when the variable is off. So more control on indicators. For buttons and switches, there's just a lot more included operators now. So of course, you've got push buttons and toggle switches. You've also got multi-position switches and selector switches with more styles than ever before, all nicely scaled. And basically, you just have more choices to pick the type of operator that you want to use in your particular project for that particular function. Also, jump buttons. The jump buttons are what you typically use to change from screen to screen, at least what the operator uses to change from screen to screen. And those have been enhanced with new icons and those sorts of things. Another capability, though, that's been added to the jump button, which of course is for changing screens, is that now you can specify you want the operator to change screens with a swipe. So effectively, you can put a jump button on the screen that is basically invisible and is looking for a swipe gesture to change screens. So that's a new capability in Cscape 10. Also, sliders have been enhanced. Not only are there more display options and more different types of sliders than ever before, but we now have a new rotary style slider and a rotary action on the touch gesture to be able to manipulate and basically rotate that new rotary slider. Bar graphs have been enhanced. Now, instead of just solid colors in bar graphs, you now can choose images or specific patterns as the fill for a bar graph. So effectively, you can turn a bar graph into a progress bar if you choose. And you can choose either a linear bar graph, which we've always supported, or you can choose a rotary bar graph as well. Gauges and meters have been enhanced with new visual options, as you can see here on the screen. But one of the biggest updates, and this applies also to bar graphs, which I just talked about a minute ago, is that now you don't have to have an integer-based variable in order to have a gauge object on the screen. So if you had a real variable that you wanted represented by a gauge, With Cscape 9, you need to also create an integer version of that variable that the gauge can be tied to. With Cscape 10, you can directly connect or directly reference a real variable from a gauge, so you don't have to do that extra bit of work with Cscape 10. The same also applies to the redesigned trend and graph objects, which now are not integer only anymore, but can support any data type. But that's really one of the most minor changes that we've done. These objects have been redesigned from the ground up. So for instance, with trends, you can now have up to 16 pens on a single trend, okay? You can have multiple y-axes if you choose. Of course, you can support multiple variable types. At runtime, if the operator wants to kind of zero in on one particular trend line or one particular pen, they can dynamically turn off or hide effectively pens which might be getting in the way visually, and then they can then show them again when they're done. So dynamically showing and hiding individual pens at runtime is a big capability as well. And then from a graph standpoint, we've traditionally supported what's called an XY graph, but it really wasn't an XY graph with a true X and Y variable. It was more of a XY graph where X was always time. Well, we have a true XY graph with Cscape 10, which also includes the ability to do scatter graphs as well, where you don't necessarily want to connect lines between the data points. So those are also available in Cscape 10 with completely redesigned trends and graphs. From an alarm standpoint, you have a lot more tools in Cscape 10 for displaying alarms and enunciating alarms. So you now have an alarm banner that will only display if you have an active alarm. And then it will scroll across the screen with an alarm message if it has multiple alarms or the alarm message is too long to be displayed in one time on the top of the screen. So a very flexible kind of automatic scrolling alarm banner can be included on any screen that you would like to include that on. Now, as you're displaying alarm history or current alarms, if the list that you're looking at on the screen is longer than what will fit on the screen, you can use gestures to scroll up and scroll down through your list. So again, you've got gesture support that's added to the alarm object. So, and again, having the ability to have messages which are dynamic. In other words, you don't have to have the same text that's displayed every time you have an alarm message. It can be dynamic in that it could include some standardized text and some live data. All that can be included dynamically at the time the alarm enunciates. The recipe object has been completely redesigned. In the past, you had to kind of build your own recipe object, which was totally capable, but we now have a single recipe object with a lot of different configuration options to make it a lot easier to build a fully functional recipe object. So as you're selecting a different product, an operator needs to select a product for the machine to run. You can, if you choose, have those all listed along the left, and they can use gestures to scroll up and scroll down through the list to find the specific product that they want to run. Once they've selected a product, it will show up at the top right to show what the current product is that has been selected. You can, if you choose, have icons or graphics for products as well as for the different process variables or ingredients. As users are changing the quantity of ingredients, if you choose, you can make that a tumbler type or a spinner type control for doing those edits if you'd like. And you've also got some integrated operator buttons included with the object for doing things like effectively loading a specific recipe or saving a recipe if you've made changes to it, maybe adding a new recipe based on an existing recipe. And if they're not sure what button does what, there's also a help button that's included, so they can press that button and it'll show you what the functionality is for each of those other buttons, which is really useful. So recipe object has been completely redesigned. The removable memory object now is much better than it was before with Canvas. So you've got multiple views available, both a folder view and a list view. You can do sorting of the files and folders, based on normal sorting type criteria. You also have tabs for both micro SD and USB flash drive. So with previous versions, it was strictly micro SD only for the most part. And you've also got built-in buttons for copy, delete, etc. At least those that you want to include to be available to the operator. So big improvements to the removable memory object. And then there's an all new video object. So if you want to include help videos with your machine control screens, you can do that. Now, there won't be sound included with it. And of course, in a lot of environments, it's too noisy in an industrial environment for the sound to be heard anyway. So they would be videos that you would create that would have the equivalent of subtitles, kind of some prompting text, if you will. But we already have some customers doing that today with existing OCS models, and Canvas will be able to do that even better because it supports more resolution, and the video object is really nice. It's got all the control buttons included right with the object, so you don't have to build it or anything. They're just included by default. So the play and the pause and all those sorts of things and the replay buttons are all there and available to you. Now, I don't have a slide for it, but one of the other great capabilities that's available in Canvas is the ability to automatically scale the screens you've created to different screen sizes. So if you've got, for instance, a 7-inch and a 10-inch, or machines where you might use a 7-inch display or a 7-inch model as one option for your users, or you might have other users that would prefer a 10-inch option, you could have literally the same project, and then you could let Canvas do the scaling for you. So that's really a handy feature to be aware of that's available in Canvas. So navigating up and down from screen to screen is easier than ever with Canvas. So we've talked about improvements to Cscape 10 in general. We've also talked about a lot of improvements that were made that really are only applicable to Canvas, specific graphics objects that we've spent the last 10 minutes talking about. So this brings up the question sometimes with customers and even distributors who are trying to advise customers, and that is, who should be using Cscape 10? Should everybody use Cscape 10? Should you only use Cscape 10 if you're utilizing Canvas? Well, really, we kind of have summarized it like this. First of all, if you are going to use Canvas for a project, you have to use Cscape 10. You won't have a choice. Now, if you're not using Canvas, you can feel free to transition to Cscape 10 on your comfort level, on your schedule, because obviously Cscape 10 is a major release. It's going to take a little bit of learning from a learning curve standpoint, although we don't think it's going to be that bad. And you may want to do, kind of a lot of the typical type testing that's required anytime you do a major upgrade to any kind of software package. So we want you to feel comfortable to transition to Cscape 10 on your schedule. We are completely confident in all the testing that's been done in Cscape 10, but we do realize it's a major release. So that's our advice to you, and that is that, again, if you're using Canvas, just use Cscape 10 right away. If you're not using Canvas, use it on your schedule. And the good news is you can have both versions installed on your desktop simultaneously, so you can switch back and forth. So that's really something to be aware of, and that is, we're not forcing you to switch to Cscape 10 immediately. We're allowing you to do it kind of on your schedule. So I definitely noticed that there have been some questions and some answers that have been provided. Let's kind of go through those and see what questions we may have here. And again, if you have any additional questions, we would encourage you to kind of type those in at this time. And I also want to mention is this, and that is, on our Tuesday live stream coming up on July 2nd, which is the day after Cscape 10 is released, we're going to have a special question and answer session and demo session of Cscape 10 and Canvas. And so you'll have an additional opportunity there if you tune in live for that FAQ type session, and also live questions we'll be taking with Cscape 10 and our live streams. Okay. So let's see, we have one question. Let's see, let's go to the answered questions. Okay, so one question, we had a customer who isn't that familiar with IIoT, which is one of the abbreviations or the acronyms I used on one of the screens. IIoT stands for the Industrial Internet of Things, which is really all about digitizing machine data so that it can be analyzed and utilized for the intention of improving the quality and the efficiency of machine operation. That's really what IIoT is all about in a nutshell, if you will. And being able to get data from a machine to whether it's an internal server or a cloud or a database or something else is all kind of part of what IIoT is all about. And a couple of aspects to IIoT, and one other additional aspect, in addition to kind of the pushing of data from a machine to a cloud or to a server, is also visualization. That's also included with IoT. And specifically Cscape 10 with Canvas does include those additional features. Okay, here's a question. I have the symbols for Cscape 9. Can I transfer them to version 10 as I have done for every update before? Casey's answer is absolutely. It's the same exact program, so you certainly can keep the symbol functionality you've paid for in the past with Cscape 10. Let's see. Can I check the ladder logic at the same time I open the graphic screen? Okay, so the answer there is they're not able to be edited simultaneously. So you're going to flip back and forth quickly between graphics and logic. But when you're on a screen tab, you're editing the screen. When you're on the logic tab, you're editing the logic. So that's basically, it's truly not simultaneous, but you can flip back and forth incredibly quickly. Let's see. Does the graphics editor now open in a full view? Effectively, the graphics editor will take up as much of the screen as you allocate to it. So if you have a very large display, for instance, and a lot of us have pretty good sized displays these days, then you could choose to have that graphics and logic editing section pretty much as large as you want, and then place the other tools, the Project Navigator and the Project Toolbox, and in the case of the variable base advanced letter, the program variable window. You can place those all where you want, and really with as much emphasis or as little emphasis as you want. When you open it, does it default to fill the tab, or do you need to zoom to fill the tab every time, like in the old editor? I'm not sure of that particular answer. You do have very quick and easy zoom control in the editing tab. I don't know for sure if it zooms automatically to fill or not. That I would need to double check on. How many screen objects can the Canvas unit support in a single screen? It's basically 1,023, not 1,024, not 1,000, not 999, but 1,023, which is the same amount that we've supported in the past. Can I change the size of multiple objects at the same time by selecting them all and entering the dimensions of them all at once? You have some new tools that I think we recently covered in a live stream. I think last week's, as a matter of fact. You have some new tools for selecting objects and also for lining them up, aligning them to the top or to the bottom or the middle, left, right, center, also distributing them. And you can go into, what you can't do yet, I don't think, is go into the enhanced attributes and type in a specific dimension. That I don't think you can do yet. But that's definitely something that we're going to want to get on the list to get done as quickly as possible. Can you use reels with sliders instead of just integers? The answer is absolutely yes. Also true with bar graphs and meters and gauges and trends and those sorts of things. Can I install version 10 while keeping version 9 on the same computer? Absolutely. And that's one of the things I'm going to show you in our live stream on Tuesday. Is I'll actually go ahead and show you having them both on there simultaneously. And if there's any specific hints for doing that, I'll give you those at that time. Let's see, for the sliding object, can the color change as the sliding motion progresses? On some of the sliders, yes. Okay, not all the sliders, but on some of the sliders, yes, they can. Let's see, and actually, even just using standard attributes, you can. So the way you would do that with even just a standard slider, one of the new sliders, at least in Canvas, is I believe you would utilize the color attribute and then just change colors as different levels are reached. Let's see, here's a question. Other than upgrading to version 10, what changes are required to run an XL project in Canvas hardware? Okay. So for instance, going from an XL7 to a Canvas 7 or a Canvas 7D. Well, basically, here's what will happen. So when you first open up a program that was created with Cscape 9, it's going to ask you to back that up. And that's just a best practice, right? Anytime you're using a file with a new version of software, you want to make sure you're using a copy of the original file, not the original file itself. That way you can always go backwards if you need to. That's just normal good practice. But when you open a file that you created with, say, with Cscape 9.9, and you're intending to take that file and convert it from an XL7 to one of the new Canvas 7 units or 7D units, then what will happen is you're going to open the file. Hopefully it's a backup. You're going to go into the hardware configuration and change it to the Canvas model. And then it's going to go through a conversion process. And it'll automatically convert everything, first of all. There will probably be a prompt for you to examine a map of the fonts that you used with Cscape 9 and the fonts that are going to be selected in Cscape 10. So that will probably be displayed, a dialog box that shows you, here's how we're going to map the fonts, because the fonts are much more extensive and much more flexible with Canvas than they were in an XL7, for instance. And then after that, after it goes through that conversion, then it's going to be mainly touch-up, as Casey has mentioned in his reply. Okay, which Canvas is equal to an EXL6E? Okay, so the Canvas doesn't support the 5.7-inch display size anymore. However, you can very easily take a program that was developed for a 5.7-inch model and convert it to either of the 7-inch models. So either the Canvas 7 or the Canvas 7D, it'll be an easy conversion. Now, there'll be a stripe of pixels that aren't used, but you can utilize that space as you see fit with the new controller. The other thing you could do, you may not want to do this, you may want to modernize at this stage by getting rid of the function keys. But if you're still utilizing kind of some of the functions of the function keys, you could kind of create your own virtual function keys in that location or that stripe that is now open after you converted to the 7-inch. Was the true XY graph just for Canvas or for all models? The true XY graph is only for Canvas. Any changes to debug mode? Is Data Watch available during debug? No major changes to debug mode. Data Watch is available during debug and always has been. Okay, and let's see, is that the only... Oh, we have a question from our fearless leader. I think it's tongue-in-cheek. He's wanting to know, are recipes only in metric? Can we use imperial measurements as well? I think he's got tongue firmly planted in cheek as he asked that. Here's the next question. What is the storage max capacity on the SD drive or the USB drive? Okay, so here's the way that we state capacity in general with SD and with USB. So generally the way we state capacity is 32 gigabytes or smaller. Now the reality is that you could go much larger than that. It's just that when you get greater than 32 gigabytes, then you're going to have to pre-format the drive before you plug it into the OCS. And that's because larger drives like that usually come pre-formatted in what's called exFAT format, which is kind of geared towards, at least it's traditionally been geared towards kind of photography type applications or video type applications. And sometimes it can be a bit of a pain in the neck to convert or to format a drive over to, FAT32 from exFAT. So that's why we state it that way. The reality is we can handle drives much larger than that. I'm sure up to 2 terabytes without any difficulty, and probably bigger than that, maybe even. So certainly up to 2 terabytes could be done, but I think you'll continue to see us specify 32 gigabytes just to try and keep customers from buying huge drives when they don't need them. Again, providing that the smaller sizes are still available. Okay, another question. By the Wi-Fi adapter, can I download the program to the all module PLC? The Wi-Fi adapter works great. If what you're asking is, because you were probably typing it quickly trying to get it in under the gun, if your question is, can I use the Wi-Fi adapter to program any Horner controller? The answer is absolutely. Any Horner controller that has a USB-A port can use the Wi-Fi adapter. And one of the things you can use the Wi-Fi for is Cscape programming. I do it all the time, find it very convenient to do that. So again, any Horner OCS that has the USB port, the USB-A port on it, not the programming port that might be a mini B or it might be a USB-C. If it's got that USB-A port on it, then you can plug our Wi-Fi adapter into it. And yes, you can program from Cscape over Wi-Fi to the unit. Oh, awesome questions. Very good questions. Thanks for that. And there'll be even more questions that we're going to answer on our Tuesday live stream this upcoming Tuesday, July 2nd. And remember, Monday, July 1st, there's a countdown to the exact time on Monday, but Monday, July 1st, both Cscape 10 and Canvas will be available. Obviously, Cscape 10 for a free download or for a paid download if you want the symbols. Remember, you get the clip art for free if you don't need the symbols. And then July 1st, we can start taking orders and shipping as they are built, the Canvas units. All right, thanks for joining us, everybody. If you have a colleague who you think would like to see a recording of this webinar, we will be posting it on our YouTube page where we have all kinds of other content in the upcoming days. So as soon as Emily has a chance to edit it, it'll be up there on our YouTube channel. All right, thanks everybody. Thanks for joining us.